My earliest traumatic experience happened when I was 5 years old. But I think my working memory kicked in probably around 3.5, 4. My mother, and I had to get older to even look at my mother with grace, right? And that happened for me when I was 19. I decentralized and I said, when my mother was 19, she had one kid and was pregnant with a second. And I couldn't even imagine that for myself. That was the first moment that I was like, I need to talk to my mom about what her life was like before I was born. Because all you know is your perspective from a child, and you like, yo, I went through a lot. When I was 5 years old, my mom was dating a guy at the time. He was like a drug lord.
Welcome to another edition of the CYR podcast. Today, we got a special guest. We always got special guests here. Always got special guests. Tylynn, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. It's Good Friday, so praise the Lord.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Man, so I am a Christian hip hop artist, born and mostly raised in Omaha, Nebraska. I lived kind of all around the Midwest growing up throughout my childhood, just because my mother moved around a lot. But yeah, I mean that's we'll start there, and then we could dive a little deeper.
Facts. So you're a Christian rap artist. That's something that is a little less taboo now. I know when we were growing up, because we were around the same age, when we were growing up, Christian rap was like looked at as
corny.
For
sure.
Well, let's be honest though, like some of the beats used to be corny. That's what did it. Like them beats I was like, but now, like when you listen to Christian rap, I'm like, okay, I could do this. And it's a good message too. It's a good message. I feel like the message with music is, some people are like, I don't listen to music for the lyrics, but like that's the most important thing. That's the thing that really resonates with you as you just chilling throughout your day. You start saying lyrics, and those lyrics have an impression on you. And now it's not corny. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But as a Christian rapper, R&B artist, what was that journey like for you becoming that person?
And right before I touch on that, it was something that you said where you said people say that they don't listen to music for the lyrics. I hear people say that, and I think maybe on a conscious level you believe that, but your subconscious is still taking in the lyrics, whether you believe that you're focused on it or not, right? Because we are what we eat, like when you hear that, but that's just a matter of like anything you consume. So that's not just physical food. That's what you're actually taking in through your ear gates, your eye gates, all of those different things. And you do become that, whether you do it on a conscious level or a subconscious one. So people can say they don't listen to things for the lyrics, but you are though. You know what I mean? Whether you acknowledge it or not. But how I got to that place of becoming a Christian artist is really peculiar, right? So I didn't know that like Christian hip hop was a genre. I didn't know it was a thing until, what was it? 2020, around 2020 pandemic. I saw this music video, like it just popped up in my algorithm on YouTube, and I'm watching it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, oh, it's got a little bounce to it. This is cool. I don't know who this artist is or nothing. And then the first thing that I noticed was I was like, oh, they say no cuss words throughout this whole thing. So I rewinded it and I played it back again. I actually started listening to him. I was like, is it like Christian rap? So then I like started diving deeper, looked up the artist, all of this different stuff, which was really Miles Minnick, and he's been he's been making a wave. And then that opened up like my whole world, because I only knew of a few. Like I knew there was Andy Mineo, I knew there was Lecrae, I knew of KB, right? But to me, they were just like some anomalies, I had no idea. Like, no, it's a whole movement actually over here. And so when I found that out in 2020, I started doing a couple of challenges in that realm. And just like the love that I got was crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, oh man, this is pretty dope, But like, I'm not like a Christian rapper, so to speak, but I was just like, I've always had like faith, right? So like my foundation was built on faith, even though, my life in no way was really submitted to God. It was more like intellectualizing my faith type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I could read the Bible, I could understand things, certain principles, whatever, but it was never in a revelatory way to where it actually changed my heart, to change my actions, right? And I think that's the disconnect that a lot of people who may call themselves Christians, but their actions don't reflect it, can have, and I was in that space. And so, God really did some crazy supernatural things just in a time span of maybe like 6 or 7 months when I found out that that genre existed. So I'm doing challenges, and then I think it's 2021 when Indie Tribe threw on their first Holy Smoke Festival, and at that time it was called something a little different. And they like invited me out to be one of the artists to perform at it. This festival was huge in Atlanta. Now, mind you, I'm not even a Christian rapper, so that's kind of crazy, but they like had me come out there, perform, and then that's when I really met the space. You know what I'm saying? I met like how the fan base was. I met artists that I met who did that are like crazy huge now. You know what I'm saying? Like even to just watch the progression for the last 5 years. And I used to sit with that sometimes, and I used to be like, God, why me? Like, why did you know what I'm saying? Why did you put me there on that platform? You know, and I really believe it was because God was trying to expose me to what he knew eventually he was going to walk me into. It just was taking me a little bit to actually get myself to the place where I actually really submitted my life to him. So, and that happened for me specifically in February of 2023 when I actually had like a real encounter with the Lord. So,
facts. I was just about to ask, like, was there a specific moment where you started to see or know, or God spoke to you, you're like, I'm going to follow purpose instead of following like what I think I should follow? You talk about that moment in February?
Yeah, for sure. So what led up to it was in 2022, I had a breakup, like a really serious bad breakup. And then like throughout that time of just like working on my healing which is when I had went to therapy. And I was, you know, just learning more about trying to essentially like extract certain thought processes that I had, so to speak, right? And I think the biggest thing that I had took away from therapy at that time essentially was to learn how to give myself grace, right? I think with the way that I grew up, everything counted. You know what I'm saying? And so I had to learn that aspect. I had to learn how to give myself time, had to stop condemning myself, shaming myself for just decisions and choices that I made. And even you can start to feel like when something doesn't work that you just wasted so much time. And eventually you can start to condemn yourself for it because you're like, well, I made the choice. I stayed. I did all these things. Right. And so like, I think once I finally kind of came to the end of myself in that respect, I just had this moment where I felt so overwhelmed and I didn't know why. And I was just like, really, I was like, God, what do you want from me? Like, that's the place that I got to. Like, what do you want from me? And so for the first time I fasted, like an actual just water fast. I was like, everybody talk about doing this fasting. So I'm about to try this fasting stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna do this little 3-day water fast and see how it goes. And I kid you not, like the dreams that I got were so very vivid. And the revelation that God would give me behind the dream was also like literally in alignment with things that I didn't even know in full that I was dealing with, right? And on the second day of my fast, I remember it was a Saturday going into which would have been going into a Sunday morning. I remember I just had this moment. I went in my studio and I made this song called Evolving. And I'm making the song, I'm mixing it, I'm all these things, I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh man, this is super dope. Once I get done mixing it, I'm like, now I'm gonna play it all the way through just to hear it. And when I played it all the way through, I just broke down. It just out of nowhere. You know what I mean? And I've been sitting and playing this song over and over again because I'm mixing it. But when I think when I let it actually minister to me, like it just kind of like really broke me down. And I walked in my kitchen and I was leaning just like against my kitchen sink. And I'm just weeping. You know, I'm just weeping. I have my head down. I have my eyes closed. I'm just weeping. And then suddenly I could sense something, right? Because I don't like to use the word feel too much, right? But I could really sense a presence, like a strong presence. like in my living room, right? My eyes are closed. I'm in my kitchen, but I could sense that there was something in my living room. And then suddenly I felt like something on both sides of my shoulders, almost as if it was like two things leaning against me to like comfort me at that moment. And, you know, I had suddenly a crazy sense of peace. Like I just knew definitively something changed, and I knew that it was gonna be okay. And I opened my eyes, and on my microwave, the time was 8:55, and I sensed and heard something say, look that up. And I said, no, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not like an angel's numbers person. I'm not a number person at all. I'm not like a superstitious person. But something kept urging. It said, look it up, look it up. So I was like, well, if I'm going to look it up, I'm going to look it up from a biblical sense. So I'm like, you know, chapters, verses 8:55. There's only 2 books in the Bible that have a 8th chapter and a 55th verse. Now, mind you, the Bible's 66 books. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, whoa, to narrow that down. And both of them are in the Gospels. It's Luke and John. So I looked up Luke, chapter 8, verse 55. And it's the story where Jesus had essentially went to the little girl, I believe it was Jairus' daughter, and everyone thought she was dead, you know? And Jesus was like, she's not dead. She's just asleep. And Jesus woke her up at that moment. He said, get up, right? And then he looked around and he said, now get her some food. And that part made me laugh because I was on a fast, right? And so I was like, oh, wow, okay. You know, God has a sense of humor. That's funny. Okay, cool. But so I'm like, all right, the next day is church. I'm still on my fast. I'm not going to break my fast because I'm like, sure. Okay. That was a moment that felt very strangely reassuring, but I'm still going to, you know, go through church, all the different things. When I woke up that Sunday morning, I started singing the song that's, oh, the overwhelming never. So I started singing that. Mind you, I haven't heard that song in probably like years. So I just started singing it, and I had this thought, and I was like, dang, God, that's actually low-key a little psychotic. Chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I was like, that's crazy. And I was like, God, you really love people that much? I'm like, yo, that's wild. So then I go to church. It's a first Sunday, so we're taking communion. Now, mind you, I feel very light, and I'm excited that we're taking communion because to me, in my heart, communion always meant like fresh slate. So, you know, obviously, like it's in remembrance of what God did for us. But like, I'm like, okay, cool, we're doing communion. And so when we get to the end of service and we have our communion and all of that stuff, I'm sitting down. Now, communion, you usually take it in a communal way. But I'm still sitting down because I'm just praying. I'm praying, and I'm holding it. My head's down, my eyes are closed. You know, everybody partakes. I can hear them partaking, but I'm still praying. And so after they partake together in communion, the worship team comes up and the worship team starts singing, oh, the overwhelming never. So I said, okay, God, yeah, I hear you. That was you. And that was you confirming that was me, you know? And after that, that's all it took for me. I knew I was in the hands of the God, the creator of all things, who is love. And to me, that was the safest place to be. So I gave everything to God, including my music, because like the Bible says, where your treasure is, your heart lies also. And so that was my treasure. That was my heart. And I gave it to God, and he's done just exceedingly and abundantly. So
that's powerful. That's powerful. Yo, real quick, I almost forgot. As a licensed therapist, I'm big on mental health, and I'm big on making sure that you're taking care of you. And I also want to get rid of this stigma that we got towards mental health. Like, there's nothing wrong with talking to a therapist. So if you're somebody that's out there that really wants to start getting their mind right, who wants to really start understanding their emotions and being able to process things that you probably repressed, that you probably ain't talked about, that you might have been even ashamed about talking about. Or check this out. You might not be ashamed about it, and you just ain't found a person for you to talk to. You want to find somebody that's relatable, that can understand you, got a little swag, you know what I'm saying? A little swag. And they not too far removed. Make sure that you tap in with Bear Company Counseling. All you gotta do is hop down in the description, click the link, put in your info, and the front desk rep will reach out to you and get you plugged in with a therapist that I promise you, as long as you're ready, will help you to get whatever you need right up here so that you can succeed in every other avenue and aspect of your life. Tap in with a therapist today at Bear Company Counseling. Now, you can get back to the video for real. I promise I won't hop back in again. Something that I've noticed with everybody's story is that God many times will use pain that we experience in life to really bring us to our purpose and really show us and reveal to us him. I think in all situations, like, God reveals himself, but for many of us, like, it doesn't click until that pain aspect is there, right? You talked about just like experiencing that breakup and then starting in on your journey, because you probably knew God before then, right?
Right.
But that relationship looked maybe a little bit different, but it was through a combination of going to therapy, a combination of really becoming introspective with yourself, that God started to reveal to you like what your purpose was in your life. Can you talk about just like, because a lot of people might think like it's either I go to therapy or I go to church, like one or the other, or I go to the gym, or I do music, or I do these things, but it's not a combination of all those things. Can you talk about what that experience was like for you, having both and?
Right, for sure. So I think that what can happen, right, if we're looking at it from like a traditional standpoint, there's a lot of legalism in the faith, you know? And so I think when you get into that side of things, you do believe that only anything can be done by way of simply just faith in God. I believe that faith is the vehicle that empowers everything else, right? So God is a counselor, right? God also gave people the gift of counsel. So we all have these unique gifts and strengths that God has given us to literally use for the body. Just like the Bible tells us, you know, like just like a body has arms, legs, etc. We need each other. Right. And so I think that part really does. It just stems from, if you grow up in a certain environment in the church, it can just become a very religious thing. And if you get too stuck in religion, then you will think everything else is taboo. Or we can't do that because it's not specifically in the Bible, etc. But in the way Jesus counseled people, you know? And so it's like, then why can like brother to brother, brother to sister not counsel, you know, when God has gifted us with like the gift of being able to counsel. So for me, I was never religious, you know? So it was easy for me. Like, and I tell people a lot, you know, I think that God positioned me uniquely. I grew up and experienced a lot of trauma. I know for a fact it was only by the grace of God that I didn't lose my mind with things that I experienced, witnessed, went through, etc. And I think because I wasn't a kid who consistently grew up in church, I never took on a religious spirit, so to speak. Now, when you're learning in the faith, you do have to start differentiating between, is this more of a religious teaching, or is this more of like a scriptural, you know, through and through teaching? And so I did have to kind of start learning that stuff. But all in all, I didn't really have a religious spirit. So I had no fear about like, should I go to therapy or should I just read my Bible? For me, I looked at the blessing in the components of both. So
I love that answer. You mentioned just growing up with a lot of trauma. Can you take us back to your childhood and tell us about that?
Yeah, my earliest traumatic experience happened when I was 5 years old. But I think my working memory kicked in probably around 3.5, 4. But my mother, you know, and I had to get older to even look at my mother with grace, right? And that happened for me when I was 19. I decentralized and I said, when my mother was 19, she had one kid and was pregnant with a second. And I couldn't even imagine that for myself. And that was the first moment that I was like, I need to talk to my mom about what her life was like before I was born. Because all you know is your perspective from a child, and you like, yo, I went through a lot.
Yeah.
But so yeah, when I was 5 years old, my mom was dating a guy at the time. He was like a drug lord. And we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? So when I say I've kind of lived all around the Midwest. And you know, got caught up in whatever he got caught up in. And one night we are just at home. I remember we're in the living room and suddenly SWAT comes. I mean, running through our yard, like with a bunch of huge assault rifles, and they just kick the door in. So it's, you know, I'm just in shock. I don't know what's going on. And they're just pointing their guns at me, my mom, and my sister. And they tell us to all get on the ground. So we get on the ground, and I remember I'm on one side of my mom, my sister's on the other side, and they're just holding their guns, like pointing them at us. And I remember hearing my mom yell, please don't point your guns at my kids, you know? And she kept saying it, please stop pointing your guns at my kids. But they didn't. They just, you know what I'm saying? Like they stayed right there. And like in that moment in my head, I can distinctly remember thinking like, I'm about to die. Not even, and that's the thing. I don't think kids truly understand the finality of death, right? But like something in me was telling me that like, oh, I'm about to die. Like, you know, but they were tearing up the house. They're flipping mattresses. They're pulling dressers out, like throwing everything everywhere. And then when they didn't find anything, they just left and just left
it
our
how it
home
was.
like that. Yeah, you know. And you know, my mom, she's just weeping, also angry. So it's like I'm watching her, because it's like, what do we do next? And in that moment, you know, my mom, I don't think she knew like to comfort us, because herself was still, even I think, in a very hyper reactive like type of state. And so it's like you experience that, and then the next thing is just kind of like, now we're just cleaning up and we're trying to put it back together, you know. And then you just go on, and then, you know, you're told don't tell anybody about this stuff. So then you're just going to school the next day like nothing happened, you know. And that was like my earliest memory and introduction to like something traumatic, you know. And then my mother ended up staying with this person for 7 years. And so my mom was in a very abusive, like physically abusive relationship with him. So, you know, I witnessed my mother being physically abused by this man. You know, I witnessed, like not even witnessed, but my mother telling me not to call the police. There was a instance where one day I did, like when I just heard them fighting, and I was probably about close to 8 years old at this time, you know, and I called the police and then I hung up. You know, just a natural fear response from being told so many times, we don't talk to the police, we don't call the police. But it's like also my survival part of like my instincts were like, I need to call the police to help my mom, but I'm also not supposed to. So then I hang up. Well, the police, you would call you right back. Mm-hmm. So the police call back, you know, my mom answers, and obviously, no, nothing's going on, etc. And I was in the bathroom. I remember my mom comes and she like opens the bathroom door, and she is in front of him. He's behind her and he's like yelling or whatever. And my mom's looking at me and she's like, Danielle, did you call the police? And she looks me in my eyes and almost mouths to like say no, because he's behind her and he's like wilding out. And so I look at her and I was like, no. And, you know, she looked at him and she's like, I told you she didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so there were just so many different moments and instances growing up where my safety was uncertain. And I think another moment that had such a deep impression on me, and this was the last year that my mom dealt with this dude. I was 11. We were living in Kansas City, Missouri. My mom had woke me up in the middle of the night and was like putting my coat on and telling me to be quiet. And so I'm knowing we're clearly sneaking out, you know? And so we're doing all this stuff. My mom is getting her stuff. We walk downstairs. My mom, you know, opens the door, doing everything silent as a mouse. And then we get out the door and we're walking. It's winter. It has to be winter time, because I remember I was freezing. I could like see my breath. And we're walking, and then suddenly the guy, he comes out the door. He don't have on literally, man don't got on nothing, no shoes, no nothing. He just got on his boxers. He come out the door and my mom grabs my arm and she's like, run. We take off running up the street. He's chasing us. Mind you, he don't got on no shoes, nothing. He's chasing us. We're running. And then my mom like lets my hand go and she like continues running forward. I think in her, not even a matter of I think in her mind. She told me, you know, when I had asked her why she had let my hand go, because when she let my hand go, she got much further. Obviously, she's an adult running. I'm 8. I'm a kid. I'm running. You know what I'm saying? I'm running. I'm still running. I'm watching my mom get further away from me running, and I'm running. And then like he catches me, like grabs me, has my coat. And I remember like he kind of like did like a small little jerk. And then my mom stopped. My mom stopped instantly. Because one thing I can say about my mom is my mom was always a protective woman, you know, like a fighting spirit. And so, you know, he grabs me and he like looks me dead in my eyes and he was like, tell your mom. And then it's like the darkness, because I remember like his eyes look so dark. Like I had never really seen him look like that before. And his eyes look so dark. And I think it was almost like a moment of realizing what was actually happening, because then suddenly it's like he snapped out of it and he just like let me go and he just turned around and he walked back. And then I ran up to my mom and I remember I was so distraught. I was crying and I was angry. And I was angry at my mother because I was like, you left me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And my mom had told me, she was like, I knew I had to let you go because I knew he wasn't going to do anything to you. You know, like I knew he loved you. He wasn't going to do anything to you. But like she had to create the distance in order for ultimately us to get away, type of thing. And yeah, I remember we walked, I don't know how far we walked, but we walked to like this one lady who I used to call like my Aunt Linda or something, but she wasn't really my family. And we walked to her house and like my mom used her phone and a lot of things started changing at that point in our life. Like my mom actually really left them. We really got like our own place and stuff. My sister ended up coming back to like live with us because me and my sister, we were separated a lot. My sister would stay in Omaha with our Nana, which is my mom's mom. But I would always stay with my mom. Every time they would ask me, do you want to stay here with your grandma in Omaha or do you want to go back with your mom? I would always go back with my mom. And I believe now looking back that I was like my mother's angel. Like there was a reason that I needed to stay with her, because if I didn't, she probably would have died. You know what I'm saying? But I think I was that little buffer that was there to calm the storm just enough, you know? Because I remember another instance when we lived in Tulsa, you know, me and my mom, we were in her Jeep. I used to love her little red Jeep Cherokee. We in her Jeep, we pulled up in a driveway. The dude she was with, he pulls up behind us out of nowhere in a truck flying, just angry. He gets out his car. He has a 2x4. He gets out the car. He comes to the Jeep, smashes it into the back of the Jeep, shatters the window. Mom, put my head down. He doesn't know that I'm in the car. You know what I'm saying? And he walks around the car and to the passenger side. And when he saw me, then he dropped the board and he like walked away. It was like, but when he saw me, it was like shock, like, oh. So, you know, it's like when I think about those moments, I'm just like, yeah, God, I think that I was meant to be there as like a guardian, you know what I'm saying, for my mom. Even though, yes, it gave me a world of trauma, you know, that I had to work through later on in life. And anger had a stronghold on me, literally up until like 2022. Like all my life, anger, pride, like, because it was like a protective factor for me, you know, and I was fighting a lot growing up and all of that different stuff. But yeah, man, praise God for just like redemption and healing. So yeah.
You mentioned it, but I was just gonna say, man, like being able to look back and reflect and see how you were able to protect your mom in those instances. I think that's a beautiful thing. But huge but. And like I said, you mentioned it, at the same time, that's a huge burden for a child to take on. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned just like all of the trauma that came from that. I could only imagine just like the type of understanding of self. So like in therapy, I like to refer to these things as core beliefs, right? Like it's what helps us make an understanding of the world around us and our place in it, right? And if I'm seeing my mom be subjected to this physical violence from somebody who's supposed to love her, and I'm also in this situation too where I don't feel safe and I feel put at danger, like from your standpoint, going through that, what did that say about you, or how did you internalize that for yourself?
So, I think from young, right? And I think this is a natural trauma response, probably. I was very hypervigilant, right? So you learn how to pay attention to your surroundings, circumstances, all the things. And I think maybe around the time that I was about maybe 10 or 11-ish, I developed this train of thought where I said, I am not going to be like this or this or this, right? Because I hated the way those things made me feel, right? My grandmother, my father's mom, I used to go visit her every summer, and I would stay with her in the summer. And I always say I believe that my grandma was my saving grace, because my grandmother was the opposite of every other world for me. She was structured, like everything was predictable with her. I had a bedtime. I had a certain place my pajamas were. I always had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she was just loving in every way. And so when I was exposed to that with my grandmother, that told me there was something different than the chaos that I lived in. And by the grace of God, even at a young age, I think I was able to internalize that enough to know that there was something reachable. I truly, truly believe if I did not have my grandmother in my life and her being the woman in the way that she was, I don't know if I really would have had a chance. But because I saw that, that was my goal. So it was like, even though this is my life and my reality, and of course, day in and day out, I'm going to be responding based on trauma, based on age, all these different things, I still had a goal. And I was like, I can get to a place in my life where this doesn't exist because I know it exists because my grandma has it, right? And so I think for me, that's what helped me to still feel like I don't have to become what I'm exposed to. I did not, how do I say this? I did not believe I did not believe that was shaping me. I hated it, right? And so with that particular distinction, I think that just helped me, because it wasn't like I was like, oh, this is my normal and this is normal. I knew that wasn't normal when I experienced what I did with my grandma. So it was like, I'm not going to be like this. I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to get to that. That's my goal, you know? And I felt that way as a kid. But one thing that I will say is that, like, it is hard to get to anything if you didn't watch a person do it. You don't know how. So you can have an idea of it, but, you know, just like I say in like a particular verse, one cannot become something that one is not allowed to see. Ooh. If you don't know how to get to a thing, then that thing is just an idea. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start a business.
A dream.
Right. Yeah. But I have no idea. I've not studied anything. I don't know anybody that's, you know, successful in it. And so that became my struggle then when I got older. You know, it was just like mainly in like the relationship space, you know. As far as like structure and being able to set a goal and hit it, I learned how to do that, you know, probably from just like my academics. My mother was huge on my academics, you know, which is interesting because it's like, meanwhile, I'm living this life that is so unstable, but my mother expected me to not get a C in school, you know? But like that to me started meaning it started taking on its own meaning. Like my academics became very important to me. So I thank my mother for that. You know what I mean? That she still held me to this high academic standard in spite of everything else. Forget all of that. But when it comes to these books, like, don't waste your time, you know? And so like, yeah, my main struggle just became, I think, more like of a relational one. And I know that is probably once again, because even though I knew I didn't want what I saw my mother experience, I never saw the other side. So it's like, how do you get to the other side when you haven't seen it?
It's a foreign concept.
Right.
It's a foreign concept. I talk with a lot of my clients about that because I think, and not to generalize, but I believe it's so prevalent, just like in the Black community, like a lot of us are not shown what a healthy relationship looks like. I didn't grow up seeing a healthy relationship. Like you didn't grow up seeing a healthy relationship. And I bet if we had 20 other people in here and asked if they grew up seeing a healthy relationship between their mom and their dad, I guarantee at least 18 out of those people are going to be like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like when we're placed in positions of like, how do I start to have healthy relationships? It almost feels like it's like repulsive to a point, because it's like I don't like when we're introduced to like what secure attachment is. It's like, nah, I don't like this. This is not it. This is corny. I don't even like you. I'm not even attracted to this. You know what I'm saying? And so it's a matter of I truly believe getting around other people, one who you can relate to, finding the 2 out of 20 and really starting to learn from them and really starting to see how they live life. Because like you said, when you're not exposed to something, when you don't see it, that's just an idea that I can't even start walking to. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a really good point. Something else that I want to touch on too is earlier on, you were just mentioning like therapy helped you to start giving yourself grace. And I don't know if you realized it or not, but one of the things that I got from what you were just sharing is that the idea of like, I'm not going to be this, I'm not going to be this, I'm not going to be this. And the component of your mom placing such a high emphasis on your academics, it almost created like this overcritical part of you where it's like, from the outside looking in, it looks like you analyze every move and action that you take. And if it even veers a little bit off of the track, you beating yourself down about it. Is that accurate?
Nah, that's super accurate. Like what's super funny about that is like, I always tell people like, yo, I have a strong gift of like discernment. Right. And I think because of that, I always say when you are gifted with discernment, you're tasked with giving the most grace. So I am very critical of my own actions and decisions that I make. And God had to teach me how to stop holding other people to that standard, because that made it hard for me with people in relationships, because I'd be like, I would never do something like that. Or I'd categorize it like, that's stupid. Like, you know what I mean? But I didn't have any grace to give. And it probably did come from that. Like the fact that it's like, no, if I came from everything that I came from and I can still manage to do this, that, and the third, and I don't make excuses about this, that, and the third, I won't accept anybody else's, you know? And that's something that God had to kind of teach me. You know what I mean? That is just like, okay, but you also made OD mistakes, right? And God still gives you grace, right? And you can't try to look at people, one, the way that you're looking at yourself, but then also two, the way that you're looking at yourself almost could be self-righteous, right? Which is maybe that critical or me over analyzing things within myself, you know? And these are just all lessons that, yeah, I had to gain from both therapy and just diving more like into the scriptures.
What's a relationship, whether it be a friendship or even an intimate relationship, where you, like looking back, you saw yourself projecting like that critical piece of yourself, and you starting to realize and change the way that you looked at other people, or the grace that you would give to other people?
I think the biggest one is probably like my mother. So I have great friends. Literally, I thank God I have great friends. I have always attracted great friends, you know? And so with my friends, like I don't fall out or anything. I've had one instance where it was kind of like, you know, it just wasn't really gonna work. And that's mainly when I came more into just like my walk with God truly. But like every other friendship, I'm blessed with my friendships. I feel like the way I give love, and the way that I serve my friends is very unique. And I don't know if it's because as a kid, friendships, I feel like I needed them, right? And now I don't feel like I need them, but it's just I learned how to be a good friend since a kid because at that time I think I felt the need, like I need friends because everything was crazy, right? But so I would say probably my relationship with my mother, like I said, when I had that moment when I was 19, when I finally stepped outside of myself, because for a while, you know, like I had some resentment in my heart. I can genuinely say that, you know what I mean? Like towards my mother, wishing that our life could have been better, easier, just different decisions, et cetera, right? But like when I stepped outside of myself, I had to realize that like my mother, because she had my sister when she was 18, she had already experienced a world of trauma before the age of 18. So then she has a kid and then she has another kid. She had no time to really heal because at some point she just started trying to survive. And it's like not only now does she have to survive, but she also has to keep these two little kids alive. So it's like you don't have a moment to stop. And I mean, you can, right? But based on sometimes what you've been through and choices that you make, it just starts making it feel more and more impossible. So it's like I really had to look at it and go like, man, my mom went through a lot and then had two kids by the, you know, age of 20. We're both out here in this world. And she's just like, how do I keep these two little girls from experiencing things that I experienced and raising them? And you're practically literally still a kid yourself. We know the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. And so it's like, yeah, you're not making your best choices and your best decisions. You're just doing the best you can. And it's like when I had that realization, I went and I remember I sat and I talked to my mom. And I said, Mom, I said, tell me about how your life was like growing up before you had us. And my mom is very tough. And so she didn't want to talk about it. She was like, no, nothing. It was fine. You know, I don't really need to talk about it. But like she started talking about it. Inadvertently, she started talking about it. It wasn't nothing. I mean, sure, some things was hard. And, you know, it had this to go. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to just let her keep talking. I'm going to just listen. You're like, but it's really not that big of a deal. And, you know, and so that really showed me to give grace because I'm like, my mom did the best she could with what she had. You know, and it's like, sure, any person could always do better. But you really have to believe that most people are doing the best that they can, you know? And just being able to adapt that, I just started trying to apply it better to people. Not perfect at it, wasn't perfect at it, but like it was at least a new understanding and principle that I found value in. So I think that was one of the things that also kind of helped me too, to maybe stop trying to hold people to such a standard. But that happened without trauma being healed, right? So without dealing with trauma and being triggered, I was able to do that. But once you put me in an environment and I got triggered,
all that out the window.
All that went out the window, for sure.
I think, but to even give you some flowers with that, like that right there was the beginning piece for you to be able to heal that wound or even start applying concepts to heal the wound, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, going back to like a lot of us don't have those good examples of relationships, and many of us in our generation grew up with like, you just seen, you're not heard, like our emotions really don't matter.
Yep.
I'm a dominate you with anger. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna dominate you with anger, but when I feel this, like you better get small and you better hear what I'm saying to you. Exactly.
Right.
And so being able to step outside, of all of that is placed on you, right? And seek understanding. One shows a level of like, again, introspection, right? Mm-hmm. Like there has to be something more to this. Like I want to know why. you know, and that leads to that piece of like, we can't start healing until we acknowledge something. And you were looking for something to acknowledge there. Like, there's a reason that my mom did what she did. There's a reason my mom raised us the way that she raised us. Like, there's something more to this. It's not just my mom is a bad person. My mom didn't care about me. My mom didn't any of that. Right. And going through it, like, those are things that we think. Cause like, even with myself, right, I look at how my dad raised me, and like, me and my dad are cool now, around the same age, 19 years old. When I called my charges, like, that's when, cause they called my mom when I called my charges. I told them to call my dad, so they called him too. But I don't know why they called my mom, because I knew she was going to be disappointed in me. She was crying, she was mad, all these different things, and that broke my heart. But my dad, like, he used to tell me, you're going to end up in jail, blah, blah, blah. So like, tell him that. He going to be like, told you so. But I actually got a different response. He was like, hey, he called my phone, and I didn't find this out until I got my phone out of evidence. He was like, he left a message. He said, hey, when you get this message, give me a call. And mind you, we hadn't talked in 2 years. Me and my dad hadn't talked in 2 years. The last time we talked, we had fought. And like, I fought at one of his girlfriend's house. I did some disrespectful stuff, super disrespect. Like, like
not proud of it, right?
Yeah, not proud of it at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just called and he left that message, and we sat down probably like a month or two later, and we just broke everything down from my childhood, from just like why he did what he did, and not him trying to justify it or anything like that, but just him telling me his mental space going through all of that, and also him owning his wrongs. You know what I'm saying? And so to bring it back to what you were just sharing, I believe like that was the catalyst for you to really be able to heal, because imagine you never understood what your mom's experience was, or like you never sought that out, and you never took that perspective of like, there has to be a different thing here. Do you think you actually could have started taking the steps to like letting go some of that anger and resentment?
At that time, definitely not. I feel like I would have remained hypercritical, you know? And I think because any child wants to feel protected by their parent, right? That should be the natural order of things. And so, yeah, without that, I feel like, yeah, I just would have remained very critical, you know? Just like, man, you know, you could have done better. We could have done this, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that introspection, man, like, I really do think that a lot of the things that I had to grow up fast, you know, because of that stuff. And so, yeah, it just didn't afford me a level of naivety that most kids would have. And so because of that, I really do think that's why my mind just kind of grew the way that it did, like the level of introspection, you know, being aware of my surroundings, becoming very self-aware. Like, I can always say, like, I'm a very, very self-aware person. Like, I can literally usually always think of something and probably think of 4 different outcomes. Now, it doesn't mean that I would always still make the best decision, but it's like, if anyone were to ever come to me to be like, you know, you really did this, I wouldn't have no excuse. I would be like, no, I knew. I literally knew what the outcome was going to be or could potentially be. And I didn't care. And that was like the difference for me. But like the level of self-awareness, like that thing kicked in for me early, because I, you know, just don't have no choice. It's just a survival thing.
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, I think for sure. Not if I didn't have that moment and going to talk to my mom and all of those things, I think I would have remained hypercritical for a while longer before I finally did maybe come to that place, which I believe by the grace of God I always would have. But yep, it took for me to get away from her for it to happen. And that's the interesting part, you know. Once I'm in college and I'm in my dorm and I know my mom is no longer responsible for me, that's when I was able to take a moment to stop thinking from the perspective of being this kid who wasn't really, you know, protected in the way I felt I should have been, to being like, she's her own person and I'm my own person. And I was able to think about her like her own person. So
that's necessary. It's necessary. I'm gonna make an assumption and you can tell me how accurate it is or how inaccurate it is.
Go ahead, therapize me, bro. Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that you deal with a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, because like yourself, who is very self-aware, self-reflective, like has this strong sense of discernment. I do too. And it's like a double-edged sword. You know, it's like it works and it works to your benefit, but then there's times where like it's not off and it doesn't turn off. Do you struggle with just like constant stress of your mind running and of analyzing everything and thinking of everything with everything that you got going on?
So I would say that like, so I used to struggle really toughly with anxiety because of that, because I have a million thoughts that are going on, because I, could be critical, like in my thinking, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say now I don't allow myself to get anxious, right? So if I do start feeling like some sort of like anxiousness rising up, like I literally go to God. I go to God for everything, right? To maintain everything. And so for me, I don't really allow myself to operate in that space of just being anxious anymore, but yes, I can have moments to where I definitely am dealing with like a level of stress with something because of just what's in my head. And like you said, like having like that level of discernment, it really does, like the way that you look at the world, the way that you look at progressions, the way that you look at anything, you start to feel like something other people just don't get, right? And so then you start to feel misplaced where you are, because you're just like, it's like when I can see a person struggling, right? Most people, when you're struggling, because I've been in that place, right? But when you're struggling, you don't know that you're like really struggling in that moment. You want to justify everything, I don't know, this is. And so when you have the discernment to see it, and if you care about a person, you love them, you have to figure out how to balance. I could try to tell them, but I don't even think right now they have the wherewithal to, even if I said it to them, they could even understand it, to even start to accept it, to then potentially change and heal. And that's stressful. You know what I'm saying? To just sometimes have to watch people suffer, and me, I just take everything to prayer, because I'm like, at the end of the day, I can see where people are, and because I can see where people are, I don't want to damage their relationship just because I may be able to sense or understand a thing that maybe they can't yet. But I take it to God and I have faith then that God will do the thing that I can't do, and that, eventually that person or whatever will heal, so yeah. But as far as like the anxiety, yeah, I used to like terribly, to where I had like a panic attack pretty much like for the first time in my life, and I didn't know what was going on, bro. I remember I was in Mixon's ice cream shop, and it was a bunch of people around, and suddenly, and mind you, the day would seem like it was going fine. I don't even know how I got triggered, but I just started feeling like it's too many people in here. Like I don't want to be in here. I don't want to be in this space. And I just felt this sense of just being overwhelmed that was too much. Like I just walked out of the person I was with. I just walked out, left them, walked out of the little ice cream place, didn't say a word because I felt like I couldn't. So I walked out, and I remember I went and sat in the car, and I just started breathing. And I was trying to I was asking God, I was like, what's wrong with me? Like that never happened to me before. And I still to this day, I don't really know what triggered it. But like once I got more language and stuff, I realized, I was like, I think I had like a bit of a panic attack, like an anxiety thing or whatever. And so, yeah, man, but now, I test the scriptures, and once I tested them and I saw that they were real, like it just transformed things for me. Like when the word is telling you, like, don't be anxious about anything, but with prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, make your request known to God, and the peace that surpasses all understanding, shall be with you. So that's just kind of how now I live my life. I take everything to the Lord.
I feel that. Do you ever use any of your creative outlets to cope or process?
For sure.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's what makes the best artists, right? Because we can just create, just all fun and games if we want to. Oh, this sounds fun. This is creative, but there's really nothing about you that's in it. So you could tell a story that's super general. I could put Tylynn in it. I could put Payton in it. I could put anybody in it. But for me, with my music, I really want to express what is going on inside. And I'm always trying to connect dots with things. That's just kind of like my thing, right? With the mind, the overanalyzing. I always want to connect dots and I want to make things like make sense. And so being able to put that out musically, I think helps me to not go crazy, because there is so much stuff that just goes on like in my head. And it's like, I need a release for it, and whether that could be in me just trying to talk it out with the Lord, or whether that's me saying like, no, I'm going to put this in like song form, because then when I put it in song form, I can organize my thoughts. And that's another huge part. I can create the storyline. I can organize it. So then when I play it back, I'm kind of like, oh, so when I make music, my music, I always pray it ministers to others, but more than anything, I need it to minister to me. Like when I organize all of that stuff and I play it back, and I'm just kind of like, oh, okay.
I feel that. What's one lyric that you that comes to mind for you and out of your catalog that kind of conceptualizes the journey that you've been on, like where you were at and where you at now?
One? Yeah. Oh my gosh, bro. That's a tall task. Yeesh. Oh man. Getting to one lyric.
It could be multiple too. It can be multiple. I know.
Yeah, I may end up rapping a whole verse, bro. I'm sitting up here.
Go ahead. Hey, go ahead.
Let me think. So I would say like Call It Life is a really good one for me, right? And it's like, allow me to vent, going through things, been paddling it in, losing my balance and still trying to paint a picture with a colorless palette again. I got this, dang, that's crazy. Why am I forgetting my lyrics? Wait, losing my balance and still trying to paint a picture with a colorless palette again. I have way too many things in my head right now. Why am I forgetting that? I know that. Wow.
Break down the concept of the song.
That's crazy. I'm spacing on that. That's gonna bother me.
That's
but
okay.
Like, so look, in the back of my mind, I'm about to be trying to literally search the lyrics. But so no, like essentially the concept of it is, it was like just one day that I was reflecting just on like my life, and essentially like, why do I think the way that I do? How did I get here from there? And like, what's the middle ground with that? Like, where am I currently? And so essentially what I do in the song is I keep creating these parallels, right? So I'm just like, what did I learn in church versus then what did the scriptures kind of teach me here, right? Like building my faith, fighting my doubts. Sometimes I feel like I do the reverse. And I'm building my doubts and I'm fighting my faith. So like I keep creating essentially these little back and forths. There's a line in there where I say like, I never grew up with my father. Sometimes I wonder how much it affected me, not from a lack of love or him neglecting me, right? Because I didn't grow up with him, because he caught a bullet instead of him catching me. But it's like I have to sit with these thoughts of like, how did it affect my life not ever knowing him? I will never know, because it's not like it was a matter of, oh, I knew him and he left. But it was like, I never had him. Did that play on my life? Would it have been better to have had him? Or, obviously me not having him is purposeful too. I don't believe that there's any purposeless evil, right? But like, yeah, so in that record, I think I'm just being the most honest. Well, I say the most honest. I'm honest in all of my music, but I'm being honest in a way to where I'm really being vulnerable. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to make this because I wanted to entertain people. I literally made that because I was sitting with just like a world of thoughts of trying to almost like pick myself apart, so to speak. So,
I feel that.
Yeah. That's crazy. About the end of this, I'm going to remember that whole verse. I'm going to come back on, oh my gosh, why am I stuck right there? Oh, that bothers me, man. Oh my gosh. Feel like I failed the rap community. Yo, my bad, y'all. This don't happen often.
Hey, the quick 4 was still cool too.
You know what I'm saying?
The quick little 4 was still
It's gonna
cool.
come back though. I probably just got to get the beat going in my head. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
What's the song called?
Call It Life.
Call It Life?
Yeah.
When did that come out?
I dropped that in 2023. So in 2023, I dropped the song every Thursday. I dropped the album, a joint album with me and Lightpole. Yeah. And I had dropped the EP in January before I started the Really Resilient series. So that year, I put out so much music, and by the grace of God, made it all the way through the year. He sustained me because I don't think I've ever worked harder than I worked in that year. But yeah, that's when that came out.
And you got some big accolades that year too.
I did, man. Like
go ahead, gas yourself up.
You know what I'm saying? We got some placements. We got some stuff on All-American, Homecoming, The Rookie. Honestly, I have like over probably like 40 placements at this point.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. What is the royalties on that look like?
So they can be up and down. It just depends. Like if it's on something like, All-American, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Versus if it's on something that's like a show that's on, no shade, but that's on like Amazon Prime. And it's, it's one episode, then it's, what I mean? It's kind of cool. So like it fluctuates, it goes up and down, but I would definitely say that it has been a nice consistency for the most part. But it's like when you have your high moments, you're just kind of like nice, but then everything else, it just stays at like a cool base level.
Facts. Mm-hmm. How do you even get opportunities to get those placements? Well, first off, like your music fire, so like that's why. But like I think there's a lot of artists even from the city who got good music, but like they might not know how to tap into those different avenues. Like what did you have to do to be able to get in those positions?
Yeah, so honestly, bro, literally another God thing, it found me. And that's what has happened throughout my music career is things and people find me while I'm just sitting here making the music. Like I never tried to go out and pursue sync. I didn't know much about it. I always thought that was like a huge mainstream. You got to work with a label in order to then, but shout out to Jamel. He worked with Def 7 and Def 7 they were almost like a liaison with sync companies and like music publishing libraries and stuff. And so he reached out to me because he just heard the music that I was making back in 2018, 2019. And he was like, yo, like, how, would you feel about potentially working with this and that? I didn't know how none of that stuff worked. I was like, wait, you can get my music on TV? I'm like, bro, what are we talking about? Yes, let's do it. And so the thing is being just not really educated the way that I should have been when it came to that. I realized I got, the short end of the stick in a big way. You know what I'm saying? But it's one of the things where it's like lesson learned. I'm not mad about it or anything like that. But so I started working with him. He was working with Def 7. Def 7 was working with a whole bunch of music libraries. And so I just submitted these songs that I was working on and they were just landing. You know what I mean? I won the Mark Production Music Award in, 2021 or 2022 for Best Hip Hop Song because my song Gotta Go Up. It's been placed probably over like 20 times from America to, like UK, all of these different things. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how I got pulled into that. And then when I won that award, that's when I had other music libraries reaching out to me to work with me to make other sync records, and I don't even know the formula for making sync records. If I'm being honest, I literally just know how to be me.
Yeah,
that's it. And I know how to live up to whatever the standard is. So it's like, if you're telling me like, oh, I want to make this particular type of record and to feel like this, I'm like, okay, cool. I do my research. Oh, I got it. Boom. And we're going to execute it. And it works. And then it's like, oh, yeah, the NBA such and such game picked this up. Oh, whoa. You know
Say less.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so, like, I really think that is really just kind of like my gifting coming out working with the Holy Spirit. Like, being able to, like, literally hear something. And I mean, I can pick something. I can pick up how to do anything creatively. You know, I feel like I'm super duper right brain, you know? Yeah. Like, so anything creative, like I'm just going to be able to gravitate towards it. And I think that works in my favor, even with the sync things. Because if you tell me we're trying to nail something, I'm going to figure out how to nail it, you know? And that probably also too could come from having to grow up, having to always hit a certain standard, like excellence. We gonna work in excellence. We're gonna do everything in excellence. So I'm always trying to push myself to like, I want to be the best at whatever I do, but not in like an egotistical way, right? Because it used to be more pride for me, but now it's just more so like, first of all, like I know God made all of us very uniquely, and God does everything in excellence. So I should naturally want to do everything in excellence, right? Like whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord and not for human masters. Everything I approach, I'm going to approach it like that. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it, you know what I mean? My best foot forward, etc. But yeah, man, things just kind of found me and I was just ready, which is the blessing. Like the work that I had been doing made me ready for when things found me.
Yeah. Full circle moment. Our traumas, right? Our pain is where God speaks to us the most. Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that, right? We learn through our pain where our excellence lies, right? Mm-hmm. You were just talking about how like that spirit of like the spirit of I can do all things mm-hmm. also came from that same place where the expectation was high for you and the criticalness mm-hmm. of how you lived your life, like everything was on you, right? That same thing is the same thing that God is going to use you for in his kingdom, right? Amen. You know you can do all things. And I think so many people out there, so many of us don't realize that if we just change the perspective on our pain, and we got to come to you have to get to a place where you're able to see that, like, it's not just going to happen like, you know what I'm saying? So actually, sometimes it does just happen like that. Mm-hmm. But when I'm able to look at my pain and say, okay, how do I use my pain? Mm-hmm. How do I use my pain for purpose? That's where it really starts to change. And that's where our trauma goes from, I'm the victim here, or this thing mm-hmm. is happening to me. And now it's like, this is happening because of me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make everything from here on out happen because of me. Mm-hmm. That place of ownership and losing that victimhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Constructive versus destructive.
Boom.
Yeah,
right
for
there,
sure.
Right there. We getting close on time. I got a couple of things. If there's somebody out there who's dealing with anxiety, who's dealing with depression, who's experienced some of the similar, that don't even make sense, some of the same things that you've experienced, and they're unsure of how to deal with it, what type of advice would you give to them?
I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that you are not the culmination of things that have happened, right? So I believe that it is easy to label yourself, right, as being a failure if you fail at something, right? But that's not who you are. So like the lies that will come into your mind trying to tell you that you're worthless, right, that you're not good enough, all of those different things, that's exactly what they are. They're lies, right? As long as you are breathing and have breath in your lungs, you can always move forward. You can always progress. So I would just say to have hope, right? There is a God who sees you, who loves you, and who knows you. And I would just say trust that and believe that and have hope, right? Because that God who loves you, he can really bring you through and out of anything. There is no such thing as a purposeless evil. So whatever it is that you have been through, you can sit and you can say like, man, I've just been through too much to ever be like this. I've been through too much to ever get to that place, and make excuses for your pain. Or you can say, because I've been through this and because I've been through that, I know that there are tools. I know there's things that I know that I can use to actually go forward and potentially help somebody that's coming behind me. So just know there's no such thing as like a purposeless evil. Every amount of pain that we have experienced can be used to both our benefit and even potentially somebody else's, you know, but have hope. Have hope.
Come on.
You're not what you've been through.
There we go.
You're really not. You're not what you've been through.
There we go.
Yeah.
Also, where can people find you? If they want to tap in with your music, with what you're doing, want to support the movement, where can they find you?
For sure. You can find me on all social media at Tylynn Music, Tylynn Music. That is Instagram, that's Threads, TikTok, everywhere. YouTube, you can find me on all things with that. And my website is justtylynn.com. So if you want to just keep up with whatever I'm releasing, merch stuff, etc., definitely hop on there. You can join the emailing list. And yeah, let's get it. Tap in with me, y'all. I promise I'm really cool.
There we go. There we go. I appreciate you just being vulnerable and talking about these things. This is, I truly believe like this is what it's going to take, like having conversations like these, hearing testimonies like yours to really start to shift the culture and shift the environment of just living in hurt and pain and like not talking about it and not having a space where what we went through like be a real thing, because most of us have these experiences but we just never say anything, and we let them define who we are in not the best ways. You know what I'm saying? And so just being able to share this and show this to people and them see that I went through this, I experienced this, I had this, but I didn't let it end there. And I turned it into this by the grace of God. By the grace of God. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. This has been super dope. And I just pray that it's fruitful for anybody that encounters it. And I believe it will be. I believe that it's going to bless a lot of people, you know, just because, like you said, the stuff that we go through, we can either kind of use it as a crutch and an excuse, or we can use it literally to like fuel us. You know what I'm saying? Like, in purpose, because I think I see that often, that when people go through traumatic things, they use it as an excuse and a justification for where they are. And it's like, it's not to say that those things did not affect where you are, because the reality is that's the truth. But however, it doesn't have to stay that way. And I think people need to know that. Not just hear it, they need to know it. They need to believe it for themselves. You know, the scripture that tells us like hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. So it's like, when you lack hope for the thought or the idea that you could be anything better because of what you've been through, you will be heartsick. And anybody that's heartsick is gonna feel debilitated. You're not even gonna want to move or try. And so I just hope that this reaches people in a way to say, like, you don't have to stay there. I know you've been through it, but you don't have to stay there. You know, so I hope that's what this blesses y'all with. I hope this is what that gives y'all, you know, because it's the truth. All that other stuff, it's a lie, but this is the truth.
That's a bar. That's a bar.
You feel me?
I feel you.
Yeah.
And everybody out there that's watching, I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of the CYR podcast, because when you clean your room, you change your life, you create your resilience, and you change your reality. We out.
Peace. Hey, really resilient. Let go. You know what I'm saying?
Let them know.
Yeah.
That was smooth. How you feel about it?
Nah, man, that was super dope.